Live from ZTN Studios in Harare, Zimbabwe, welcome to State of the Nation. I am Owen Kaura. Now, today's program is brought to you by the Center for Natural Resource Governance, otherwise known as CNRG. Our topic on this panel discussion is coal investment in Hwange, what's in it for the community, and of course, Zimbabwe. Now, it's no secret Zimbabwe's socio-economic recovery path, besides agriculture, is mainly dependent on the performance of the mining sector. The government launched a blueprint to grow the mining sector into a $12 billion industry in 2023, up from just $2.7 billion earned in 2017. Now, of course, mining is crucial to Zimbabwe's economy, but will this push for more mining lead to better development outcomes for the citizens of Zimbabwe? Now, to help us understand issues around coal mining in general and its impact on communities, the economy and the environment, we have the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee on Mines and Mining Development Chairperson, Honorable Edmund Mukaratigwa. Honorable, good afternoon and welcome to the platform.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Great. Now, we also have CNRG Programs Manager Henry Nyapokoto, and virtually we have Coal Africa Coordinator Nerissa Anku and Hwange Community Member Malvin Daka. Now, of course, I'll start with you in the studio, Henry. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Owen. Good afternoon, viewers and listeners.
Great. And virtually we do have, like I said there, Nerissa. Nerissa, good afternoon and welcome to the show.
Good afternoon, Owen. Thank you.
Great, and I certainly hope technology will be our friend this afternoon. Also virtually, we have Malvin Daka, all the way from Hwange. He's a community member there. Malvin, good afternoon and welcome.
Good afternoon, Owen, and good afternoon, viewers and followers. Thank you.
Great, looks like all is set, but as usual, we always start from a very, very simple place. And I'll start with the policy maker, Honorable Mukaratigwa. Of course, energy drives the economy, and one of our major sources of energy is coal, predominantly mined in Hwange. What is the current state of coal mining in Hwange regards the relationship between miners and, of course, the community?
Thank you very much, Owen. In terms of coal mining in Hwange, we are fortunate as a country that we do have an existing thermal-fired electricity generation station, and this has been serving the nation for a long time. And due to the Zimbabwe's open for business mantra pronounced by His Excellency the President of the Republic, Dr. Idi Mnangagwa, we have seen a lot of investors coming into the country, and Hwange is not an exception. We have seen a lot of other new mines sprouting in Hwange. However, I must be quick to actually point out that mining is naturally done mostly in areas already inhabited, and globally, usually there are challenges which come with that, and Hwange, like I said, is not an exception. Development is naturally disruptive. There are challenges between miners and communities. These challenges are around pollution, lack of community involvement in some key mining decisions, which impact on locals' livelihoods, as well as lack of compensating mechanisms for lost livelihoods. Generally, that is the issue. And the key aspect in the whole matter is development is disruptive, and how can we minimize those disruptive effects. And I'm pointing to the fact that communities in Hwange here and there are expressing their displeasure. There is conflict between the mining activities and the inhabitants, and what they were benefiting from the land, their way of living has been actually disrupted. But positively so, our energy sufficiency level as a country are getting better and better by the day, and we are having coking coal actually being produced. We have new coke ovens that are being constructed in Hwange mining area. These will actually ensure that we have the much needed foreign currency revenue. They are going to boost our exports. And this is a positive development. And as you know, there's a project that is coming up in the country that will span over 3 or so provinces in Mvuma, Chivu, thereabout, Manidze area for steel making plant. It also requires feedstock from coal. So these are positive impacts. Of course, they outweigh the negative impacts, and it's a question of dialogue with the communities, and they must be compensated where possible. Thank you.
It's interesting that you mentioned that development is disruptive, but of course you point out that there are also positives and they might far outweigh the negatives. We'll definitely interrogate some of those issues as the program goes on. But let me just come to you, Henry. You've obviously heard what Honorable Mkaratigwa has said there. Of course, the economy is indeed growing, and coal is still the major source of power and energy in Zimbabwe, at least for the foreseeable future. Even with the Hwange power thermal station expansion, like what Honorable just said there. Now, is CNRG saying it's wrong to boost power production in Zimbabwe? What are you saying?
No, as CNRG, we are not saying it is wrong. We really need energy in Zimbabwe, but it is wrong to boost energy production when you are using dirty energy, and also when you are trying to employ technology that is quickly becoming obsolete all over the world. That is where our argument is. We also recognize the potential that Zimbabwe has in terms of producing energy from other sources. And also, we also understand that there are large deposits of coal in Zimbabwe, and that have been so tempting to the government to try to exploit these coal deposits. And also recognize the huge energy deficit that the country has in terms of meeting the huge demand for electricity in Zimbabwe. We understand currently about 45% of energy production in Zimbabwe is coming from coal, while the remainder is coming from hydroelectric power production. With all these dynamics, with all this context, we still feel that there is an opportunity for the country to exploit or to explore other means that are sustainable, not depending on coal. Coal is destructive. It has so many consequences, so many effects that maybe I'll discuss later on.
Of course, we'll definitely discuss some of those issues later on as well. But just to bring in Nerissa, Nerissa, you are in Ghana at the moment and you're connecting with us virtually. You are from Africa Coal. What are the latest coal investment trends in Africa? Maybe let's start from there.
Thank you, Owen. My name is Nerissa, and I assist with coordination and strengthening of coal resistance struggles on the continent. We don't only resist coal industry development, but we also advocate for a new energy system, an energy system that is for the people and by the people, that is clean. I'm also a professional engineer, and I'm in good standing with the Ghana Institution of Engineers. I hold a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering and a master's degree in energetics and environment. So I quite know what I'm about to say. According to E3G's most current reports, the pipeline of proposed coal power plants or coal projects have collapsed by 76% globally since 2015 and by 47% in sub-Saharan Africa since 2015. We all know that Africa is the least polluter among all the other continents, and that is quite clear. We only contribute 5% to the global total coal projects or emissions coming from coal. We used to have 20 countries that had coal projects in Africa, but 7 of them have successfully scraped their coal projects, and we can say that their economies are now clean from coal. It's left with 13 countries that still have coal projects, and they also have intentions, and only South Africa and Zimbabwe are developing that project. So we cannot celebrate when we say that coal projects are being scraped or the coal pipeline is dropping. In the case of Zimbabwe, we cannot jubilate at all. So Zimbabwe has a lot of coal projects that I'm not in the best position to talk about. Yet the government continues to pursue new projects. As rightly as Honorable said, they are open for investments and investment into energy that we know that can be destructive. He has accepted it. So I think this is how Zimbabwe fares when it comes to coal development or coal projects. And that's the trend.
All right. But maybe, let me just rephrase the question. What are the alternatives in terms of energy? If there is no coal, what then should we use?
There are lots of alternatives, renewables. Zimbabwe has a lot of geothermal energy potential. You have solar, you have biogas. There are lots of alternatives for Zimbabwe and for Africa.
All right, we'll definitely talk about that later on as well. But let me just bring in Malvin. Malvin is in Hwange, and he is a community member. And of course, he would know what affects them. Now, Malvin, what are the effects of coal mining in Hwange?
Okay, thank you, Owen, and thanks to my other presenters. When we look on the co-activities in Hwange, they've affected us a lot. We can mention first, there's the issue of the Dekka River. No one is taking the blame on the pollution which is happening in Dekka River. And then when we look across the district, the communities, you will see that, yes, investment is coming to Hwange, but investment is coming in a situation where local communities are suffering more. We're plunging more into poverty when we have a resource which can make us rich. When we look on all these companies coming to Hwange, most of them, they don't employ women. Like, for example, the Chinese companies. So when we look on women's side in terms of employment, they are not sort of like participating. The youth, they are participating, but you discover that when it comes to remuneration, the remuneration, they are very low. Recently, we had an incident at Stein Hydro where a major project which is in the country people are being given small remuneration, salaries, when I could put it that way. So all these projects, they must improve the socio-economic lives of the people in Hwange because we have a mineral. So I'm happy because this conversation, we started it during the Zimbabwe Alternative Mining Indaba in Bulawayo. And the Honorable MP was present, and he is even saying it today that mining is very destructive and is bringing conflict. So in short, I can say it has a lot of negatives, although it is bringing in investment, it is bringing in, it is increasing energy levels or in the country. But coming to the person on the ground, we are not benefiting anything. It is causing confusion. It is bringing conflicts within our families because most of these investors, they are not consulting us. They are just coming in, talking to other people. And when we look in terms of the investment chain, mostly locals are not in the distribution chain. So maybe if we could look it that way, that maybe let's try in all the ways to involve the local community so that when we look on the socio-economic issues, we improve them as we go, as a community, as a country, so that these investments, they must uplift us so that we reach our target as a country of an upper middle income by 2030. Maybe at this juncture, I'll stop here. Thank you.
Well, thanks very much, Malvin in Hwange there. Of course, Honorable, naturally we have to come to you. So much has been said by Henry, by Nerissa, as well as by Malvin there. Now, the issues around gender, he's raised that issue. He's also raised the issues around the environment and sustainable development, involvement of the communities. And of course, you were there a couple of weeks back in Bulawayo at the alternative mining Indaba. Your response to these issues that have been raised?
Thank you very much. As a portfolio committee on mines and mining development, and perhaps including the support that we get from our partners, CSOs included, we have been involved in dialogues with communities, and already elsewhere we have facilitated all stakeholder dialogues between communities, mining companies, parliament, and the executive at their appropriately different levels. We've also recommended commissioning of some case studies in order to get in-depth understanding of some of these areas, and we should get some of these results in this fourth session that we are currently in. One of such cases we have requested for an independent study is directed on the Dinde community. But I must say, while the issue of Dinde community, so far there have been an interim relief following complaints. The executive has responded timelessly, and as you know, our president is a listening president, and as we speak, the investor has been relocated to a new location to pave way for the community's interests, while at the same time continuing with the operations. So, but we are saying we have such cases throughout the country. They may be different in terms of in Dinde or Hwange it could be coal, but in another area it could be diamonds, the other area is gold or some such minerals, but the issues are all the same. And on the Dinde issue, the committee, portfolio committee on environment, has conducted an inquiry into this area, but we want to get further insight from the mining sector's perspective. The portfolio committee on environment mainly focuses on issues to do with the pollution, contamination of water, and other environmental issues. But we get into an in-depth analysis of the mining issues. We've also always advanced responsible mining, transparency, accountability, and community corporate social responsibility or investment, since mineral resources are non-renewable too. Understanding that indigenous communities will remain with their natural environment, whatever the state it will be in, from a sustainable development perspective, human security is being disturbed, and at that level, and people are requesting that more should be done by the mining communities. I'm actually inundated with those issues throughout my tenure, I must say. And while companies try and appease the locals by way of undertaking corporate social responsibility. It's actually found wanting because it's left at the discretion of the mining companies. And in other ways, they actually prescribe. They bring food hampers and so forth, whereas communities have got pertinent needs, but they are not given a chance. Their views are not considered. They are just given what the company would deem to actually appease them or accelerate perhaps they are conducting their business. In other words, what am I saying? It's what we call greenwashing. It's nothing meaningful, considering once that resource is completely mined out, the communities are left with the dongas, pits, without infrastructure that will actually benefit the future generations. And this, in my view, is the situation in Hwange. And perhaps as a portfolio committee, we are actually in search of a model, a win-win model that will be structured in such a way that the communities will actually benefit from their resources, while miners will actually partake their profits. They will be at the same time be developing those areas. We've seen the miners developing their areas of jurisdiction in globally. They've built huge tall buildings.
And maybe whilst you're on that, on companies contributing, what happened to the community share ownership trusts? Are companies still contributing?
Thank you very much. In terms of community share ownership trust, I think in my view, it was a noble idea, and the way it was actually enforced, it has seen communities benefiting. I know one case of Hwange community where we have blanket mine, and the community share ownership scheme thereof has actually achieved a lot in terms of perhaps water and sanitation programs and other programs that actually benefit the people. And the Hwange mining community share ownership trust in Shirugwi has also seen communities benefiting to a certain extent. There were drill rigs that were able to be acquired for the benefit of communities. However, a business model sort of resulted from that, and the lack of accountability have seen distortions, but the idea was noble. But what then transpired is that this was in line with indigenization laws that were pursuing at that particular time, and they were not the best of laws, I must say. And the coming in of the new dispensation sought to actually strike a balance, because while community share ownership trusts were supposed to benefit the people, the indigenization law was calling for 51% for the locals and 49% for the investors. And anyone who is seized with the doing business or capitalism would ordinarily know that you need to incentivize an investor. Investors look for markets, and Zimbabwe is a potential market, but it doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's actually, we are part of the SADC community. So you think of Botswana, Zambia, South Africa, and Mozambique being endowed with more or less similar minerals that we have. And when an investor out there is choosing a destination, if our laws are prohibitive, ordinarily would lose that market. So when the new dispensation came in, they sought to strike a balance to say what we need is capacity to be able to attend to the needs of our citizens. How do we gain it? We need to actually give prominence to economic turnaround measures. And as part of a drive towards economic turnaround, the ease of doing business was identified as one of them. This is why we opened the Zimbabwean space. It was not possible to open the Zimbabwean space for investors while you have a skewed indigenization policy. So that policy was repealed. As it was repealed, now it's going to be reactivated under the Ministry of Industry and Commerce, perhaps as an empowerment bill. There's going to be a law that speaks to empowerment. But in a way, government is also trying to come up with a model which is a win-win-win situation, which balances the aspirations of the citizens and the desires of the corporates who are pursuing profits while protecting their environment. So what went wrong with the Community Share Ownership Trust? I think it starts from the trust deed that was developed. I can almost say in most cases the trust deed is absent. Where you have the trust deed, who actually came up with that trust deed? I think there's a challenge. It was probably left to the corporates. They actually dictated how the trust deed was going to be perhaps conjured. And that's where the mistake lies. When you become a stakeholder, it's community share ownership. What do you own if you don't have share? If it's going to be a once-off payment, are you owning anything? If there is ownership of equity, it means every year that corporate declares profit, you must earn a dividend. This is what is absent with the community share ownership model that we have. So I'm hoping the empowerment bill, if pursued, will actually address some of the gaps that have been identified as far as the failure of community share ownership trust or its successes are concerned.
Honorable has raised so many issues there, and what they are doing as parliamentarians to address some of the concerns coming from the communities. So naturally I'll come to you, Henry. Are you satisfied? Just before Honorable spoke, Malvin was talking about so many issues around gender disparities. So what exactly is going on in Hwange in terms of mining coal?
Thanks, Owen. Also allow me to go back to the first question that you posed to Honorable Mkaratiko. Sure. On the state of coal mining in Hwange. Coal mining in Hwange is so rampant as we speak. I have the privilege of visiting Hwange so often. I was there last week, and each time I go there, I will encounter a new project, coal project, going on. Investors are everywhere; they're mining everywhere. To the extent, at some point, they even wanted to get into the national park. The communities are not happy, and I'm happy that Honorable has raised an important point that the Parliament is engaged a consultant, if I'm correct, to look into the vulnerability of the communities to these mining investors. So the destruction can be seen by anyone. It's everywhere. Marvin raised the issue of Deka River. Last week, an old woman was actually saying, if you go to Deka River right now, you won't see even a frog. Yes, what it means is no more life in the river. Some mining companies are actually mining on both sides of the river, and the effluent is being discharged into Deka River. And I will not mention the name of the company, and they were saying they don't even have toilets, these guys. And they're just mining along the river. So that is the state of mining that we are experiencing in Hwange. And if it continues in that trend, in that trajectory, I would say maybe in 10 years, the whole land in Hwange will be gone, because Hwange basically is a coal deposit. Why are we saying we should now abandon, we should now retire coal? The issue is, as I said earlier on, that coal is a dirty energy. it's destructive. It's a fossil fuel. We will all understand that if you burn a fossil fuel, it produces gases. These gases, they go into the atmosphere. They become greenhouse gases that contribute to global warming, which is one of the contributors of climate change. That is why each and every year, here in Zimbabwe, we're experiencing some climate change-related disasters. Last year, we had, 2 years ago, we had the cyclones that destroyed Chimanimani and other parts of the country. We're also experiencing floods all over the country, in other parts of the country. Some heat waves. We've been experiencing some heat waves. So all these are effects of climate change, and this is coming from burning fossil fuels. So ideally, the earth was designed to absorb or to sequester coal. As humans, we are not supposed to be extracting, to be removing coal from the ground. By removing coal from the ground, we thereby create a situation whereby the gas, the carbon that comes from that is released into the atmosphere, and it has consequences on the earth. And that's what we are trying to avoid. Progressive nations have since stopped the mining of coal or any human activity that removes carbon from the earth. So that is why we are saying it's time Zimbabwe should now also take that route. We should now look for approaches whereby we source our energy from other sources rather than from fossil fuels. Coal mining, like any other mining activity, it destroys the environment. Whether it's open cast, whether it's they dig into the ground, there's some kind of destruction that happens to the environment. And when our environment is destroyed, that also affects wildlife. It also affects other human activities like farming, agriculture. It's also affected. It also affects the health of people. Coal mining, as it is, as I said, that's a dirty energy. It even affects the miners themselves. It results in respiratory diseases. The miners who spend their time in the ground mining coal, they are also exposed to those gases. They are also exposed to the gases that come from coal, which may cause respiratory diseases. So that is the global campaign, which is going all over. That countries should now start to transition from dirty energy to renewable energy. So that's why we are saying we should now abandon coal.
But it looks like it's a very delicate balancing act, because we also need the economy to thrive, and at the same time we also need energy, and at the same time we also need to make sure that our environment is protected. We'll come back to you shortly as well. But let me just go on to Nerissa. You've heard what Honorable Mkaratigwa said and what Henry has said as well. But how feasible is it for Zimbabwe to hold thermal power production?
Oh, it's very feasible. Scientific research has proved that renewables are a very feasible alternative to fossil fuels, and that the cost of renewable is significantly falling. The excuse for investing in coal has always been that coal is cheap. Yes, coal is cheap. Coal is energy intensive, but now renewables are competing with coal, especially solar PV that has been tipped to be the alternative to fossil fuels in electrification, and they are about to take over from fossil fuels. So I don't see the point in investing in coal at this point. Any country that is investing in coal at this point in the 21st era, it means that the country is moving backwards. You are going for something that people are leaving behind, and I don't think it's the best way. Renewable systems, decentralized, of course, they tend to solve all the problems that have been raised. The burdens that people have to local communities have to suffer because of such fossil fuel projects or coal mining would be decentralized, and the repercussions are not as much as the fossil fuel industries or what coal would the repercussions that coal would bring to such local communities. I also say that the world is moving away from that cliche of energy for development. Yes, energy is the driver of economies. That's that I do agree and accept. But the fact that energy is the driver and energy is cheap shouldn't be the only basis for taking decision. So we shouldn't say that we need energy to move our economy forward. Yes, but we shouldn't invest in cheap energy or energy that is destructive. We should look at the environmental impact. We should also look at the people that we want to provide the energy services for. Also, there's a new system. Research is showing that people are now moving from let me just invest into energy to what is called energy justice or inclusion for everyone. It includes recognition justice, distribution justice, and then procedural justice. So it is wrong to impose a project on a community and after that go back to go and ask them what are the problems or what is happening as a result of coal mining. The people should have first of all be engaged. That is, you recognize that yes, there are people living in Hwange around the Deka River. So if you want to give a license to someone to do coal mining, those people were there before. The investments or investors are coming. So we should consult with them, look at what the potential effects or the impact that the project is able to have on them. And then they also have a say. They should be part of the process. They have a say. They should be part of the process. That is the procedural justice out of it. Otherwise, if you sit in Harare and decide for people in Hwange, then you are infringing upon their rights. I also want to add that we have heard about a lot of research on the Deka River. There is enough research or studies to show that coal mining is having a lot of impact on the Deka River. But we haven't heard about the action that the government is taking to curtail the consequences of coal mining. This could have been prevented, or even if it has begun, there's a way to go about it. So we want to hear more about that. And I will conclude by saying that I will prescribe solar mini grids to be the first option if Zimbabwe wants to go 100% renewable. That's, yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Nerissa. You make very strong claims there. For example, Zimbabwe is going back, and I'll let Honorable Mkaratigwa respond to that. But before he responds to that, I'll just come to you, Malvin. As a resident, what do you want to see done differently by coal mining and coking companies in Hwange?
Okay, thank you, Owen, once again. And I would want to support my sister Nerissa when he said there is lack of consultation in Hwange. Because, you know, we wake up in the morning on a certain day and you'll find that there's a company behind your house. But the model which we used long back,
we might have lost Malvin there, but we'll make sure that we get a hold of him so that he finishes off his points. But let me just come to you, Honorable Mkaratigwa. You heard what Nerissa was saying just now in terms of shifting from coal mining in particular to other renewable sources of energy. Your take and your response.
Thank you very much. First and foremost, let me say Melissa is right. She's actually reading the developments on the international scene. But I must also hasten to say, as Zimbabwe, I think we are in a dilemma because we are endowed with these minerals. We have coal in abundance, and particularly thermal coal, whose primary major use is for electricity generation. So we are in a dilemma. But what we must also do is in line with our National Development Strategy 1 and our future focus. We need to understand the environment that we exist in. One, we run the risk of stranded assets. This is where I'm agreeing with Melissa. Because with the green movement, this will definitely see reduction of carbon footprint. We all know the adverse effect of greenhouse gas emissions, and this is what COP26 is all about, trying to reverse or at least mitigate on global warming. What that means is the global players have actually thrown in a lifeline to those that are going to be responsive, that are going to be proactive, by way of saying if you are going to engage in climate change mitigation and adaptation, there is also ready international funding that is available for such purposes. And when you look at our SDGs, goal number 7 is all about access to energy. And as we say, the world has become a global village. Right now, there are initiatives. I happen to be an energy and sustainability specialist, and in line with the climate change mitigation and adaptation, there is a drive on actually coming up with green grids. And these green grids are going to lead to interconnection between nations, but they are mainly going to tap from renewable energy, like your solar, your wind, your nuclear, and hydroelectrical energy. And there is also the hydrogenation phase that as a globe we are going through, which will see a lot of challenges to do with the energy. As you know, when you produce electricity, you must use it. If you can't use it, you waste it. So there are now innovations around the hydrogen, which will enable you to produce energy, store it in the form of hydrogen through electrolysis of water. Then when you store it, you can then use it. You store it during off-peak hours. Instead of wasting it, you harness it. Then you then use it during peak periods to achieve. So there is balancing in terms of your time, your usage, and balancing your energy. These are initiatives. If you involve in green energy, hydrogen innovations, there are also financial arrangements that are accessible. Apart from that, if we continue with the projects that will actually exacerbate the carbon footprint, what it means is our market, Zimbabwe as a destination, can also run the risk of being shunned international, not only for coal, but for other products that we produce in Zimbabwe, because the Western world have come up with what they call the Build Back Better initiatives. It comes with a plethora of expectations and requirements that they expect nations and markets to actually conform to if you are going to enjoy certain markets for your products. So what it means is we can close our products on some tapping from some of those markets, and yet our national development strategy is all about perhaps ramping up production on goods, products and services that are actually originating from within our borders for the export market, and is that foreign currency that will actually help stabilize our economy going forward. So in our thinking, I think we need to be innovative, we need to be futuristic. While we use the last of the coal that we have, we must be candid with ourselves to say we are not going to use it for a very long period to come. In any case, there were funds, for example, coming from China that were towards the coal-fired power station generation. But China have actually indicated that they are totally banning financing of such projects. So this means the risk of stranded assets for us as a nation is very real. So we need to start thinking of alternatives, and the time is now. While we still have the chance to use, but slowly we should have a phasing out framework that we should implement and adhere to. Thank you.
From this discussion, it shows that there is a consensus that we need to move forward towards renewable energy. And like you rightfully pointed out, that President Xi Jinping of China, ahead of the COP26, actually said he won't be funding any external coal projects anymore. But just as we round off the project, the program, coming to you, Henry, what would you want to see in the future in terms of sustainable mining and, of course, that delicate balance, the economy versus mining?
Yeah, thank you, Owen. But also allow me to go back to the question.
Please do so.
On so the contribution that was made by is it Nerissa? Yes, that as Zimbabwe, we should think of where we are going in terms of core investments. We have several policies as a country: the National Renewable Energy Policy, the climate change, National Climate Change Strategy. But we don't see the point why we still have new core exploration activities in Hwange. Why do we still know those when we have already running mining projects in Hwange? I thought as a country we should be maybe focusing on the mining projects that are going on rather than opening new mines, as we are seeing maybe in Dinde and other areas around Hwange, where we have new companies that are coming in to explore. That means there is a lack of commitment by the government to phase out core investments in Zimbabwe. We are also happy with the announcement by the president of China that China is going to stop funding those projects. Because we have been worried by what was going on in Sengwa and other core deposits that are in the country. What then we would want to see maybe as a community going forward is phasing out. Yes, that's number one, phasing out of all of core investments in Zimbabwe. Would also want to see those companies that are already in core mining starting to invest in renewable. there's nothing wrong in seeing Hwange Colliery opening solar plants. And in any case, when coal becomes obsolete, that means Hwange Colliery will also be phased out. So it's time those companies start to think of how they can now commission renewable energy plants. We also would want to see this company also investing in the communities where the communities that host these coal deposits. We usually say providing employment to locals is not a benefit to the community, because the people who will be working in the company, they are providing labor. So a company cannot claim that it's providing a benefit when the people are also providing labor.
So what are the benefits that should be provided?
So we would expect sustainable community development projects, or like infrastructure development in the community, such that when these companies falls, there will be something that will be left in those communities. Things like roads, health infrastructure, educational infrastructure. This is what we call sustainable development. Even though any mining that should be happening, it should be considerate of the environmental impact of those of its activities, and should also consider the rights of the communities, whether it's health, access to food, access to clean environment, and even their cultural rights as well. So this is what we are advocating for.
Thank you very much there, Henry. Now let me just come to you, Nerissa, as well. Just as we round off the program, what is the future?
Yeah, Owen, permit me to take you back a little, just a little.
Sure, it's fine.
I want to say that Zimbabwe is not the only country in a dilemma. The whole world is in a dilemma. We are all struggling with trying to ensure universal access to electricity and tackling climate change at the same time. The whole world is in a dilemma. And some countries have experience. For instance, let's learn from South Africa. They have tested coal and they know what coal can do. And now they say they want to move away to renewables. So why can't we follow? We also have to go and then test the waters to see that it is bad before we come back to where the world is going to. Maybe there used to be investors for coal projects. That is why we were going deep into coal projects. But now most of those investors are withdrawing. Most of those investors are withdrawing from the coal industry, because we have all realized that it is not good for the people that we want to provide energy for, the people that we want to develop. So coal has no future. I don't even want to associate the word future with coal. Coal definitely has no future. The renewable energy industry is capable of employing more people than the coal industry. So let's consider the renewable industry. And the SDG 7 cannot be realized on its own. None of the SDGs is able to stand on its own. If you want to ensure that people have access to electricity, and remember, I did not just say access, it talks about clean and affordable energy. So the energy must be clean. The SDG 17 says that we shouldn't let anyone, leaving no one behind. So everyone must take part in decision making. Women, that is SDG 5. Actually, the SDG 7 is the one that links all the other SDGs together. So we can't say that we want to achieve SDG 7 on its own, not at all. It must take into consideration the health of the people, the poverty levels that are being inflicted on people in Hwange. And so coal has no future at all. Thanks.
No, thanks very much, Nerissa. Let me just come to you, Malvern, if you're back on the line. Just as we close the program, unfortunately, technology was not being your friend there, Malvern, but just as we close the program, your final remarks. It looks like Malvin is still not back on the line. But anyway, to close off the program, I'll have to come to you, Honorable Mkaratikwa. What is the way forward in under a minute?
Oh, thank you very much. I think we need a lot of tolerance, focus, and harmony amongst all citizens. To that end, I see many a time we are having conflicts, human conflicts. We should actually refrain from arguments and embrace dialogue, as dialogue will build that confidence that we all need to actually build our economy going forward. And we need also to trust the office bearers that we've ushered into government. And I believe National Development Strategy 1 will actually complement all the efforts that we are doing, as it has been laying the foundation. And National Development Strategy 2 will correct some of the challenges experienced in the implementation of NDS 1, a foundation to be laid, and it will always be painful, especially where we have to self-determine our future as a country. The intention has not been to harm, but that can be done with what we have and where we are as a people. I thank you.
And on that note, I will not add or subtract. And that's it on this edition of State of the Nation. Coal mining in Hwange, what's in it for the communities and, of course, Zimbabwe. Many thanks to our guests and, of course, you for joining the conversation. And, of course, you can continue the conversation on our social media platforms. On Twitter, it's @ZTN News. I am Owen Kaura.